If you open your Bibles and pull out your message notes, we're in this series that I've been calling Unshakable, Thriving in the Tests of Life, and we've been looking at the life of Daniel. Now, we're going to pick up where we ended out last time, that Daniel has outlasted a couple of different kings, and actually he's now an old man. As we start chapter 6, Daniel is about 82 years old. We've looked at many of the tests that he went through as a teenager, and he passed all those tests, and he kept getting promoted. And then in the 20s and 30s, he had some other tests that he went through, and he passed those tests, and he keeps getting promoted. And then later on in his years of the 50s and the 40s, 50s, 60s, he has some more tests. And now we come to his later years, and even as an old man, and he's not through. He's going to do his greatest work at 85 years of age. Now let's pick up where we were last time, where there's a change of kingdom. The Babylonian Empire had crushed the Assyrian Empire, and now the Persian Empire has crushed the Babylonian. And so Daniel's got a new boss again, and it's changed. Well, let's watch this on the screen. The Bible says this in Daniel 5:29. King Belshazzar, remember, that was the guy who had the writing on the wall. Remember him? Okay, King Belshazzar, he was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. He was the emperor of Babylon. He promoted Daniel to be the third highest ruler in his kingdom. Now, that's the shortest promotion on record because it says, but that very night, King Belshazzar was killed by Darius the Mede, who took over the kingdom at the age of 62. So now the Medes and the Persians have come over, and they've taken over. This is modern-day Iraq, and it's taken over by modern-day Iran. The Persians have taken over the Babylonians. And so there's a new king, there's a new empire. And usually when you have a new administration, you clean house. And everybody who was serving the previous guy, they're all gone. But Daniel is such a man of character that they keep him in the new kingdom. And Darius the Mede, who has sacked Babylon and has become now the new king, says, I'm keeping that guy. I'm keeping that guy. In fact, he puts him as one of the 3 governors over all of the empire that they're now running. Now, why did this guy, Daniel, just keep getting promoted over and over and over? We see this all through his life. I don't really have time to cover this, but it's in the text, so I'm going to give you the fill-ins. So write this, and then we're going to get to the real message here. If you are interested in being promoted at work, you need to study this text because there are 3 reasons Daniel kept getting promoted at work. Number 1, his professional competence made him stand out. His professional competence made him stand out. He was a gifted leader, and he never stopped learning. And there's a lot to say about that, but I'm not going to say about it. Number 2, his personal character made him stand out. He was not just gifted in abilities, he was a good guy. And the Bible tells us that he was honest, and he was reliable, and he was hardworking, and he was incorruptible, and they couldn't find anything to attack in his character. And then the third reason that he stood out was because of his public commitment to God. And this is the secret sauce in Daniel's life. He's very open and very public about his faith and his commitment to God. And everybody knew where Daniel stood. He prayed in public. He prayed over his meals. He prayed at home in public. And the Bible tells us in Daniel chapter 6, verse 5, that his co-workers concluded, our only chance of finding any grounds to get rid of Daniel will be to find something to accuse in his religious practices. They couldn't find anything wrong with this guy. Now, here's the scene. New emperor Darius. He appoints 3 guys to be the governors over the empire. One of them's Daniel. And under that, he appoints 120 administrators over provinces. These guys did not like Daniel. We don't know why, but maybe it was because of his faith. Maybe he was Jewish. Some of you have faced that kind of persecution or at least prejudice at work. That there are people at work who scheme against you. They want your office. They want you canned. They want you sacked. They want you out of there, maybe just because of what you believe. And so these administrators, they're actually called satraps in that period. These satraps set a trap to get Daniel. And they're saying, okay, we don't want this guy being our boss. We don't want this guy being our supervisor. He's just too good, and we're jealous of him. He's not even from our area. He's Jewish. And so they're trying to trap him, and they said the only way we're going to be able to trap him is going to be something to do with his religion. And in Daniel chapter 6, verse 6 to 9, here's the plan they come up with. So the officials who wanted Daniel removed from office, they go to the king. Now, the king likes Daniel because he's appointed him. Went to the king and said, King Darius, live forever. You know, they're schmoozing this guy. Live forever. Now, we've convened everybody, and we all agree that for the next 30 days, everybody should pray to you. Now, this is appealing to the king's ego. They're going, we got this idea. Why are they making this law up? Because they know the one guy who won't obey it will be Daniel. And so they think, well, now we've got a trap. And so they say to the king, everybody's gonna worship you for 30 days, this new king. The guy's going, hey, sounds like a good idea. You are the man, you are the man. And so then it goes on and it says, and we think that you should issue an edict saying that anybody who disobeys your order by praying to anyone else besides you will be tossed into the pit where your lions are kept. Have you ever heard of Daniel in the lion's den? That's this story, okay? And so it said, anybody who doesn't pray to the emperor, we're going to make this rule, they're going to be thrown into the lions, they'll be eaten to death. And he said, let's put this decree in writing so it can't be altered or repealed according to the laws of the Medes and the Persians. So that's exactly what King Darius did. Now, what's going on here? The Medes and the Persians had a rule that if you made a law, it could never be rescinded. It could never be repealed. It could never be revoked. Even if the king made it, the king could not revoke it. So they're going, okay, here's how we're going to get rid of this Daniel guy. We don't like this guy. He's too good. He makes us look bad. And so what we're going to do is we'll get a rule that we know he won't keep because of his faith, and we'll get it in writing so then even the king can't revoke it because the king actually likes Daniel. And so that's exactly what they did. What are these guys doing? They're so desperate to get rid of Daniel that they pass a national law just for one guy's benefit, or their benefit, for one guy's hurt. Now, how does Daniel respond to this rule? He hears about the rule, and he's got a lot of options. I wrote down some of the options he could have done. When he hears, okay, for the next 30 days, you can't pray to anybody. You can't pray to your own God. You can only pray to the emperor. You can only pray to the king. So here's some possibilities. He could accept the law and just fake pray to the king for 30 days. He could go around and publicly protest with picket signs, will not pray, will not pray. That's not going to do any good because it's not a democracy. In our country, you can change the laws, but this is a law that's now been passed. You can't change it. So all the protest isn't going to work. He could appeal privately to the king. Remember, the king liked him so much, he put him over 1/3 of the kingdom, and he said he did such a good job, he said, I'm going to put him over the entire kingdom. And that's when the people got jealous. They're going to put Daniel over the whole kingdom? No, we got to get him out of there. And so he could have gone to the king and said, hey, king, we're buds here. Can you cut me some slack? I'm Jewish. I worship the one true God. But he doesn't do that. How about this? He could just keep praying to his God, to the real God, but just do it in secret. And some of you think, well, why not? That's okay. If you're in a place and all of a sudden it's illegal to pray, you can just still pray in secret. And yes, Daniel could have done that, but his enemies would have still won. Because the whole purpose of this law was to make this one guy, Daniel, pull back on his faith, to be embarrassed by it, to be ashamed of God, and to not be public about his faith. They're trying to shut him up. They're trying to take away his religious liberty. Does this sound familiar? What you're doing, Daniel, is not politically correct. We don't want you praying in public. We want you talking about God. Or he could just keep on praying like he'd always done all his life in public and not caring what anybody else thought, which is exactly what happens. Notice in Daniel, here on the screen, Daniel chapter 6, verse 10, 11 says this. When Daniel learned that the new law had been signed, he went home and knelt down to pray, as usual. So it's his custom. He does it. It's not what he normally does. He goes home, he kneels down, he prays in his upstairs room with the windows wide open toward Jerusalem. So anybody can see him praying. He's not doing this in secret. And he prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done his entire life, thanking and praising God. So he's not going to back down on what he does. And it says, so Daniel's enemies went together to Daniel's house to catch him praying and asking God for help. And of course, he knew this was going to happen. They knew it was going to happen. It's the whole reason they did this. Now, why did Daniel do this? Why was he unafraid of this law? He goes, what I know I'm about to do, I'm going to be penalized for it. In fact, I could lose my life. I'm going to be thrown into a pit with a bunch of lions. This is capital punishment for what I'm doing, praying in public. I know some Christians who won't even pray in a restaurant because they're embarrassed that somebody might see them bow their head. And you know, they're what I call secret agent Christians. You know, and years and years ago, there used to be a Lady Clairol commercial about coloring, and it said, only her hairdresser knows for sure. Some of you are old enough to remember that, if she colors her hair or not. I think there's some Lady Clairol Christians out there. Only God knows for sure if they're really believers, because they don't let anybody know it. They're very not public about their faith. Daniel goes, sorry, I've been public about my faith my entire life. And so he opens his window. Who opens the windows? Daniel does, knowing. What is this? This is an act of civil disobedience. He's going, I know what the law says, but we have to obey God rather than man. And so I'm going to publicly disobey the law because God's laws are more important than man's laws when they contradict each other. So he throws open the window and intentionally does it's not showing off. He's done this all his life. He prayed in public. He talked about God in public. He was very public about his faith. And he stood strong for God publicly. Now, why was Daniel fearless? Why was he unafraid to stand out at work? Why was he afraid to speak up for God at work? Well, I studied this text, and let me give you 3 summary statements. Write these down. And if you want to have courage at work, you need to know these 3 things. If you want to stand out at work and you want to speak up for God at work, you need to know how Daniel did it. Number 1, he remembered that God was faithful in past tests. He remembered that God was faithful in past tests. And what I mean by that is through his entire life, he looked back and goes, you know, every time I've gone through one of these tests or threats, I trust God and God takes care of me. When I was a teenager, I said, I can't eat that kind of food. I have to eat kosher food. And God took care of him. When they in the previous king said, you got to bow down before this golden idol or you get thrown in the furnace. He said, we're going to have to trust God. And they trusted God and God took care of them. And when he had to deliver bad messages to previous kings and say, sorry, your time's up, you're going to die tonight. Nobody wants to tell a king you're going to die tonight. But he told him the truth, letting the chips fall where they may be, and God took care of him every time. When you start to feel frightened and think, I can't talk about God at work. I can't talk about God at school. Because other people may get threatened or they may threaten me and I could lose my job and I could lose my house or I could lose my promotion or I could lose my friends or reputation or whatever. You need to remember how God has been faithful to you in the past. The second reason he was fearless is because he had a conversation with God 3 times a day. That's what that verse just said. It says that he would kneel down to pray as usual in his upstairs room, windows wide open, and he prayed 3 times a day, just as he'd always done his entire life. Okay, he has a conversation with God 3 times a day. Do you think if you talk to God 3 times a day, every day of your life for 82 years, that might make you more bold? Yeah. You think if you had that kind of, you had a conversation with God 3 times a day, for your entire life, do you think that would make you more confident, less worried about what other people think, less worried about the disapproval of other people? Yes, absolutely. Now, I'm going to give you a sentence right now that if you don't get anything else I say this weekend, this is the message summarized. The key to standing strong is kneeling often. You might write that down. The key to standing strong is to kneel often. The more you pray, the more confidence you're going to have. As a woman, as a man, at work, at school, when you are called to do the right thing, and you go, everybody's against it, but it's the right thing to do. The more you kneel, the more you'll stand strong. Daniel had a conversation with God 3 times a day. That gave him his strength. And then there was a third reason why Daniel wasn't worried about this. He'd been through all these tests. He was talking to God every day. And the third reason is he knew that the rewards were greater than the risks. The rewards of doing the right thing were greater than the risks. Now, was it risky for him to disobey the law? Of course. Was there a punishment? Yes. Was he actually thrown in the pit? Yes. God could have kept him out of the pit of lions, but he allowed him to go and then shut the lion's mouth, which was the bigger miracle. Now listen, there's some problems you would like God to keep you out of, but God's going to let you go into those problems, and then he's going to solve them in a miraculous way, and there's more glory for him in that. He's not going to keep you out of every problem. He's going to put you sometimes in the pit. Some of you are in the pit right now. Some of you could put names on your lions. The people who are trying to devour you, the people trying to eat you up, the people who are trying to, ruin your life. They don't like you for whatever reason. You're in the pit, or you're facing a bunch of hungry lions who want to, eat your lunch. And God often will not keep you away from, he'll let you go in the pit, and then he'll do the miracle of shutting the mouths of the lions, which is an even bigger miracle. But there were rewards to doing the right thing, but there were also risks. But Daniel knows the rewards are greater than any risks. Now, most people I know deal with fear their entire lives. You have secret fears you don't want anybody else to know about. There's certain things that make your heart palpitate, that make you go into sweat, that you go into a panic. How do you deal and defeat a controlling fear in your life? Here's the key. Anytime you want to defeat a controlling fear in your life, Daniel has this fear, hey, I could be eaten by lions, but he obviously isn't worried about it. What you do is you minimize the potential problems or the potential negatives in this risk, and you maximize the positive benefits of it, of doing the right thing, even when you're scared to death. Let me say that again. One of the ways you deal with fear in life is when you're afraid to do something, and you start to think, but this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen, and what if, and what if, and what if. That's the potential negatives. And you spend all your time focusing on that, you're just going to become more and more and more fearful. You have to mentally choose to shift your focus from the potential negatives to minimize the potential negatives, to maximize the benefits of doing the right thing. If I do the right thing, even though I'm scared to do it, what are going to be the benefits of it? And when you focus on that, it dramatically lowers your fear. Now, for that reason, what I want to do this weekend is talk to you about 6 benefits. You may have never thought of these. 6 benefits that happen in your life every time you stand strong for God in the face of opposition, at work, at school, or anywhere else. 6 things that happen to your life for good when you do the right thing instead of giving in to your fears. All right, let's look at these. Number 1, and we'll learn all of these in the life of Daniel. The first benefit is this. Every time I do the right thing, I stand for God, I stand for truth, I stand for morality and ethics and good things. Everything, standing for God is a victory over fear. Standing for God is a victory over fear, and that is one of the biggest controlling factors in your life. If you can get victory over fear, you're going to be fearless. You're going to be Amazing. You can do things that other people will never be able to do because most people are in a prison of self-imposed fear. And they think, I can't do this because of this, and this, and this. What is fear? Fear is false evidence appearing real, F-E-A-R. It's not real. It's fearful. In fact, the fear is always bigger than the reality. A lot of times you're afraid of, what's in that closet, and you open the closet, it's not a boogeyman, it's a teddy bear. The fear is always worse than reality because the reality doesn't last a long time, but the fear can keep going on and on and on if you allow it to keep coming into your life. And you keep thinking about it, and you can make yourself miserable. And if you have an event that's out there in the future and you're afraid, I'm going to be so nervous at that event, and then you spend a year getting nervous about it. And you ruin an entire year when that event would only be maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Now, there's a lot I could say about this, but let me just give you a few pointers. Write these down. Number one, fear is just a feeling, and it cannot last. Fear is just a feeling, and it cannot last. By their very nature, every feeling is temporary. Every emotion is temporary. No emotion can last, whether it's good or bad. Does happiness last? No. See, when you are having a particular feeling, you think, I'm going to feel this way the rest of my life. But you're not. You're not going to feel that way the rest of your life because no feeling can last forever. They're just temporary. They run out of steam. So if you're depressed and you feel depressed, you think, I'm going to be depressed the rest of your life. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're projecting in the future. You're taking a temporary feeling and projecting it as a permanent lifestyle. I'll always be depressed. No, you won't. If you feel guilty, I'm always, no, you won't. If you have grief, I'm always going to be in grief. No, you won't. Every emotion is temporary, whether it's anger or whether it's joy, good or bad, happiness, sadness. And you say, I'm frustrated. I'll be frustrated the rest of my life. No, you won't. You just need to remember that you should not ever let your emotions control your decisions or control your commitments. And if you know the right thing to do at work, and you know to say the right thing at work, you say, well, I feel this way right now. The person who says, I just go by my feelings, is manipulated by their moods. Your feelings lie to you all the time. They are F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. And it feels real, but it's not real. It doesn't matter how you feel, only Jesus is real. And so the first thing I would say is if you want to stand for God, but you're afraid to take a stand for God at work, it's because you're listening to your feelings, and no feeling, fear is just a feeling, can't last forever. Here's the second thing. Fear is uncomfortable, but it won't kill me. Now, when you're afraid, you think it's going to kill you because your palms get sweaty and your heart starts pumping extra and you get a little shortness of breath and you feel a tightness in your chest and you feel like your world is spinning out of control and you start to panic and it feels like you're going to die, but you're not going to die. People don't die out of fear. It's uncomfortable to do something that's fearful, but it's not going to kill you. And once you've done it, the fear subsides. Here's another truth. Fear grows when I give in to it, but it lessens when I move against it. Fear grows when I give in to it, but it lessens when I move against it. If you keep giving into fear, like, I know I should make amends with that person, but I'm afraid to. I know I should ask forgiveness, but I'm afraid to. I know I should offer forgiveness, but I'm afraid to. I know I should do this. I know I should talk to that person about the Lord, but I'm afraid to. Every time you give in that fear, the fear gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and pretty soon it dominates your life. It keeps pushing you further and further back till you're cornered in a corner and you can't do anything with your life. Now, how do you get rid of that fear? You move against it. Fear does not respond to logic because it's illogical. It's false evidence appearing real. Fear does not respond to logic. The only way you get rid of fear is this: do the thing you fear the most. And when you do it, it starts to subside. You have to step into the Jordan River before the waters part, and then the waters part. God doesn't say, stand on the edge and keep saying, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. God, part the waters, then I'll walk through. God says, no, you first. That's called faith. That's called faith. Will you trust me? I've told you this many times, that over 36 years at Saddleback, every single major decision in the history of this church, from when it was just Kay and me in an apartment, every single major decision, I was scared to death to do. But I did it anyway. Why? Because I'm not going to let fear dominate my life. Because I believe that we are to build our lives on great promises, principles, and great purposes, but not on great panic. And so you just do the thing you're afraid, and you know what? The fear goes away. You move against your fear. You do the thing you fear the most. What is it that you're most afraid of? Well, I'm afraid to talk to people about my faith. Why? Well, what will they think of me? I might lose my job. Are you kidding? Are the rewards worth the risks? You gotta think this one through. Anytime you let fear dominate your life gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But every time you stand firm, stand strong for God, and you move against your fear, the fears just kind of subside. They move away. So every time you stand for God, when it's unpopular or when you don't know what the result's going to be, you're going to have a victory over fear. You're going to become a more confident woman. You're going to become a more confident man. And the only way you're going to become more confident, is by moving against your fears. That's a benefit every time you stand for God. Number 2, by the way, you might want to pray like the first Christians. In Acts chapter 4, verse 29, it talks about the first Christians in the church at Jerusalem. And it says this, Lord, you know the threats people make. So help us as your servants to speak your word without fear. Now, they had it a whole lot worse than you and I do. When the first Christians were living, they're in the Roman Empire. It's against the law to be a Christian. If you identify yourself as Christian, you're more than likely going to be fed to lions in the Colosseum. Or they're going to hang you up on a cross, like they did Jesus, on the Appian Way. Or as Nero did, tar and feather you and light you on fire. And so to identify yourself as Christian in those days meant pretty much certain death in the Roman Empire. And they said, Lord, you know the threats people make. So help us as your servants to speak your word without fear. What are you afraid of at the office? I know some people who, I got a letter recently where a person wrote me and said, Pastor, I'm sorry to admit this. I'm embarrassed to admit it. But I've never told anybody where I work that I'm a Christian, that I'm a follower of Jesus. And I've worked there for a long time. And worse than that, I've never, ever invited anybody to church with me. And this person said, and I have this strange conflict of emotions where I feel bad and I feel ashamed that I know I should be sharing the good news, but then I feel nervous and afraid. But then when I come home and I haven't done it, I feel bad about me. And I don't like me. And they're saying, but the truth is, I don't see any benefit to it. I could lose my job. I might be ostracized. People might look at me funny. They might gossip about me. And it's all based on fear. Lord, you know the threats people make. Help us as your servants to speak your word without fear. Number 2, here's the second benefit. When you stand up for God, when it's the right thing to do, even when it's unpopular, standing for God builds my faith and character. Standing for God builds my faith and character. Character, that's who you are. Reputation is what you want people to think you are. Character is what you really are. It's what you are in the dark. Character and faith are like muscles. And the only way you build a muscle is by stressing it. That's why that's the power of weightlifting. When you lift weights, you're straining your muscle, you're stretching your muscle, you're stressing your muscle. The only way your muscle grows is when it is stressed, strained, and stretched. You're not building any muscle sitting at home, eating bonbons and watching how much does that dress cost. It's my favorite show. I don't know about yours, but you're not developing any muscle, any spiritual muscle, emotional, relational, or physical muscle sitting there. When you play it safe, your life gets weaker and weaker and weaker. You get punier and punier in your emotions, in your relationships, in your faith, in your character. when you're not straining, stressing, and stretching your faith, stretching your character. So when you make a stand for God, go, I'm scared to death to do this. You know what it's called when you're scared to death to do something and you do it anyway? That's called courage. If you're not afraid, you're not courageous. Only people who are afraid are courageous. If you're not afraid, you're not courageous. You don't need any courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is doing the right thing in spite of your fear. That's what makes a courageous woman. That's what makes a courageous man. You do the thing you fear in spite of the fear. And that's called courage. And when you stand for God, it builds your faith and your character and their courage. 2 Timothy 1:8. You must never be ashamed to tell others about our Lord. With the strength that God gives you, that's your character, okay? That's your faith. With the strength God gives you, be ready to suffer, if necessary, to share the good news. Question, what are you willing to do in order to be true to your faith? Are you willing to be put down? Are you willing to have somebody look at you funny? Are you willing to be gossiped about? What are you willing? How much character do you really have? The fact is, we have a lot of cowardly Christians. We have a lot of wimpy Christians who, they can't even handle anybody possibly looking at them sideways. What are you willing to do? Many times throughout history, Christians went before lions or went to the cross or were martyred. This year, did you know this year millions of Christians were martyred around the world? It's so common, it's not even in the news all the time, but they're martyred for their faith. It still happens. Yes, millions of people in all kinds of different countries are martyred for their faith. It builds your character. Number 3, the third benefit of when you stand strong for God is it gives God a chance to do a miracle. It gives God a chance to do a miracle. I know a lot of Christians who've never seen ever in their life a legitimate miracle. And the reason why is because they have played it safe their entire life. They've never taken any risks. They've never done anything that had slightly any bit of unsafety to it. And don't be afraid to go out on a limb. That's where the fruit is. Don't be afraid to rock the boat if Jesus Christ is your captain. If you play this safe, you don't dive in the deep end. You spend your entire life at Baby Beach, playing around in the shallows, kicking around the sand in the shallows, and you never dive into the deep end, you're not going to need any miracles. If you don't tackle any big problem in your life, you don't know that God can solve them if you've never even admitted you had a problem. God shows up when you reach the end of your rope. If you never do anything that can't be explained away by your own power, then you've never really trusted God. Most people go through life defining their life by what they think they can do. You are capable of so much more. Really. If there's anything I can do as your friend, your pastor who loves you, your coach, is to help you see that you are capable of so much more than you realize. It's just your fears are holding you back. When you step out in faith, you got to get out of the boat to walk on water. When you step out on faith, it gives God a chance to do a miracle. I have had so many miracles in my life because I'm constantly painting myself into a corner and saying, God, how are we going to get out of this one? I often put myself in a situation, literally, where I'm forced to trust God. Where I go, there's no way this is going to happen. I'm so far out here on a limb. I'm so far out here on a limb in physically, emotionally, financially, that this is bound to fail unless God bails us out. And when you trust God like that, the miracles start happening in your life. Daniel had miracles because he wasn't afraid to take risks. Like, let's throw open the windows and I'm just go ahead and pray in public in front of everybody, in spite of the fact that this is now a capital offense. It's worthy of death, and the law cannot be rescinded. So we'll just throw open. Who threw open the windows? He did. He did. Now, because Daniel took this risk in faith, and he said, you know what? if I go down, I'm going to go down talking about God. He said, I'm not going to back off. I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to back away. I'm not going to backslide. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to stand up for Christ at my work. Do you do that? You stand up for Christ in the workplace, on the work site? You stand up for Christ on the website? You ever talk about God on the website? When you do that, it opens the door to miracles. Now, here's what happened. When Daniel was picked up and thrown into the pit of the lions because he had broken this law, the news comes back to the king, and the king is distraught. You can read this later. Because the king loved Daniel. Like I said, he'd made him the third most powerful ruler in his kingdom, and he said, I'm going to put him over the whole kingdom. And now, he says, because of my stupid ego, I signed a dumb law, and the guy I love more than anybody else in this kingdom is going to die because of my ego. I let them convince me, those lackeys, to make a law that says everybody should pray to me for 30 days. How ludicrous is that? And the Bible tells us that King Darius, when he heard that Daniel had been thrown into the lion's den, he couldn't eat or sleep or do anything else. Said he stayed up all night. He was worried. His stomach was in a knot. Said he wouldn't eat. They brought him food. He was fasting. He couldn't sleep because he was so worried for Daniel. And it said he had no entertainment, so he didn't watch any TV that night. And he's so nervous. And the next morning, he wakes up and he's going, I know Daniel trusts his God. He's not my God. He's Daniel's God. And I've seen that God do miracles for this guy. I wonder if he helped him out. And here where we pick up the story. Daniel 6, verse 19. It says here, at the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the pit filled with lions. And when he got there, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice. This is his friend. Daniel, servant of the living God. It's not my God, but he's your God. Servant of the living God. Has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? This is a pretty good question, particularly for an unbeliever. Okay, the God you claim to worship, did he bail you out? Did he save you? Did he rescue you? And Daniel answered, oh, king, my God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not hurt me at all, because God knew I've done nothing against him or you, O king. I haven't been disloyal to you. I've been loyal to you. And the king was overjoyed, and he gave orders to lift Daniel out of the pit. Have you ever been lifted out of a pit? God wants to do that for you this weekend. And when Daniel was lifted out, there was not a single scratch on his body because he had trusted God. Has God ever rescued you out of a pit? Maybe you've played it so safe you've never actually been put in a pit because of your faith. But if you ever get put in a pit, and you get put in a vice, you get put in a difficult situation, what do? You praise God. You thank God in advance. You just trust God. It gives God a chance to do a miracle. There's a fourth benefit. Number 4, when you stand firm, when you stand strong for God publicly at work, it encourages other believers to stand up. Did you know that courage is contagious? When you are contagious, it causes other people to get contagious. And when you stand strong for God, it causes other people to stand strong for God. Did you ever see Braveheart? They're all willy-nilly, wimpy, scared of the English guys. Then one guy goes, freedom! And everyone goes, yeah, freedom! And they go running into battle with picks and axes and stuff like that. Why? Because courage is contagious. And when you show courage, you may just be surprised how many people come out of the woodwork and out of the shadows at your work, at your job site. They're just waiting for somebody to be a leader. Does somebody have enough courage and character and confidence in God to go, whatever, I'm just going to say, you know what, I think this is right, and I think this is what God wants to do, and here's what we should do, and other people will follow that. Paul says in Philippians chapter 1, verse 14, because of what I've been through, and he'd been through a lot, many of the Christians here have gained confidence, and they have become more bold in telling others about Christ. If you'll just be bold a little bit, it'll bring boldness out of other people around you, because courage is contagious. Then number 5, a fifth benefit of when you stand for God, even when you're scared to death at work or in your neighborhood or on the golf course or wherever. It is a powerful example to unbelievers. It is a powerful example to unbelievers. Now, let me give you 3 examples of this, a New Testament one and then a couple of Old Testament ones. But first, we see it in the life of Peter and John, followers of Jesus. And they're hauled in before the council. And the council in Jerusalem had said, we strictly warned you that you were to never mention the name of Jesus. And Peter and John go, huh? Wait a minute. This is the guy who was raised from the dead. We're not afraid of you. You can't tell us not to do that. We're going to talk about Jesus. We know he's the Son of God. We know he's the Savior of the world. We've seen him do miracles. We're not afraid of you. And verse 13, it says, when the council saw the boldness of Peter and John, their courage, they were amazed, since they knew that these were just ordinary men. But they'd been with Jesus. That's why they were courageous. You want to be courageous? You need to spend more time with Jesus. On your knees, reading the Bible, praying, talking. The more you spend time with Jesus, the less afraid you're going to be, the more confident you're going to be, the more courage you're going to have. If you are cowardly about your faith, you are not spending enough time with Jesus. He says the council saw the boldest John and Peter and John. They're amazed. Why? Because we know these guys. They're just normal guys. They're fishermen. These are not superstars. They're not like amazing, talented geniuses with advanced degrees in all kinds of, sciences. They're just normal guys. But they're pretty bold. They're not afraid because they've been with Jesus. And when you get with Jesus, you're going to be bold. The more time you spend with him. Remember, this is why Daniel was not afraid. 3 times a day, he's having a conversation with God. Every day of his life for 82 years. Well, no wonder he's not afraid. He'd been with Jesus. Here's another example. We actually see this in King Darius' life. Do you know that the result of this story, another king becomes a believer? King Darius, a pagan king, comes to faith in God. This is the second guy where Daniel has led his boss to faith. Wouldn't it be great if you could lead your boss to faith? Wouldn't that be great if you could lead your employer, the owner of your company, the owner of your corporation to faith in Christ? What's it going to take? Boldness. That's all it takes. Boldness. And because Daniel was bold, another king, first Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, now Darius, the Medo-Persian king, he comes to Christ, or he comes to God. Here's what it says. Look up here on the screen, verse 25, Daniel 6. So then, after he saw the miracle in Daniel's life, then King Darius sent this proclamation to every nation and race and language on the earth. This, by the way, is about 538 BC. That's when this is happening. We know this because we know when the Medes and Persians took over the Babylonian Empire. He sent this decree to everybody. I decree that the God of Daniel is to be honored and worshiped in every part of my kingdom, for he is the living God. Oh, he just stepped across the line there. Okay, he's no longer a pagan. He is the living God, not some dead idol, the one who endures forever, and his kingdom will outlast all human kingdoms. And then notice what he says. He is a God who rescues and saves. That guy's just been saved. Have you been rescued and saved by God? And he says he does miracles just as he rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So, Daniel continued to be successful during the reign of King Darius. And then, in the following the reign of Cyrus the Persian. The guy just can do nothing wrong. He just keeps getting promoted and promoted and promoted. His whole life is just an incredible success story. Why? Because he passes every test with courage. And when the chips are down, he goes, let them fall. I'm going to open the windows. I'm going to stand for God. And if I go down for God, so be it. But I'm going to stand for God. And that kind of, there is almost nothing that God won't do for a person who has that kind of faith in him. Almost nothing. You would be amazed at what God would do in your life if you would just walk out in faith. If you would begin to be bold, like Daniel, and go, I'm going to stand for God. I'm going to stand up for God. I'm going to speak up for God. I'm going to stick up for God. I'm not going to worry about what other people think. I'm going to be polite, but I'm going to be courageous. And so it's a powerful example to unbelievers. Not only in your generation, but did you know that the decisions you make, if you stand for God now, it could influence your kids and your grandkids and their kids and on into future generations. In fact, it can even influence unbelievers in future generations. The story of your faith. Wouldn't that be cool? You say, well, give me an example. How about Christmas? In about a month and a half, we're going to celebrate the Christmas season. And everybody puts up these manger scenes, and at every manger scene, there's Mary and Joseph and the baby and the cows and the sheep and the shepherds and the who? Who? The wise men. Okay, let's look at that verse here on the screen. Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, wise men from the east. What do you mean? You know where they're coming from? The Babylonian and Persian Empire. They're coming from Iran and Iraq. That's where the wise men came from. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, where is the one who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star from the east, and we have come to worship him. What gives here? Babylonians and Persians are not known for being Jews. And yet they know the prophecies about the Messiah. How in the world did the wise men show up at Christmas? Because of Daniel. Daniel is the reason the wise men showed up at Christmas. 18 generations later, his impact is still playing out in those kingdoms. This is the guy who for 85 years lives his faith in a pagan world, and you're going to have to live your faith in a pagan world. He lives his faith in a pagan world fearlessly, uncompromisingly, lovingly, and he just succeeds and succeeds, and he prays in public, and he talks about God in public, and he writes down things, and he does prophecies, and he leads two of the emperors, one Babylonian and one Persian, to Christ. And so these wise men 18 generations later are very familiar with Hebrew prophecies because Daniel had so impacted that kingdom. That is the power of courage. That is the power of standing strong for God when everybody else in the kingdom around you is going, that's not right, this is right. And they say what you believe is politically incorrect. And what you believe is wrong. And what you believe is out of date. Daniel didn't care. It's not important to be on the right side of history. It's important to be right. And Daniel was right. And 18 generations later, wise men from the east, from these two empires, come to worship Jesus. That is the power of one man totally committed to God. Not a wimp, not a coward, a real man, a real woman. And we still see the impact of his life today. Now, there's one other benefit. Okay, all of these things happen that standing for God's a victory over fear. It builds your faith and character. It's an opportunity for God to do a miracle. It encourages other believers to stand up. It's a witness. It's a testimony to unbelievers. I believe your best example to non-Christians around you, your two best witnesses are probably A, how you handle pain, and B, how you handle something that's unpopular. Do you have courage to stand up for what you say you claim to believe? Your courage in opposition and your steadfastness in pain are your two best witness, testimony, example to the world. And Daniel did this. Now, the sixth thing that happens, the sixth benefit of every time you stand strong for God is, I will be rewarded in eternity. Now, the fear you feel, it's temporary. It's going to last a few seconds or maybe a few minutes. But the benefit is going to last for trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of years, because God is watching to see who trusts him. God is watching who's willing to lay it on the line. God is watching to see who is willing to stand up for him. And Jesus said, if you stand up for me, I'll stand up for you, for my Father in heaven. Here's what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5. Jesus says this, consider yourselves blessed if people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you because of me. Oh, let me stop right there. Circle because of me. It doesn't say you're blessed if people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you because you're an idiot. Okay. I mean, a lot of Christians are obnoxious, and then they say, well, I'm being persecuted for my faith. No, you're just being persecuted. You're obnoxious. You're not nice to people. You're mean. You're judgmental. You're self-centered. You're self-righteous. No, it says that you don't get any credit for that. But he says, if you get put down because you humbly spoke up for the truth, you humbly shared my love, you in total compassion shared my plan and good news for the world. He said, if you are put down, you're thrown out, you lose your job, people lie about you, the trolls attack you on the internet because of me. He says, if that happens, be happy. Why? Knowing that you will be rewarded greatly in heaven. Circle the word greatly. You will be rewarded greatly in heaven. When you get to heaven, I want you to have a lot of rewards. I want you to be rewarded greatly because you had the courage to stand up at work and say, I am a believer in Christ. I know not everybody agrees with this, but he's changed my life. And I'm so grateful. And I don't serve him out of duty. I serve him out of love. I'm just so grateful. My past has been forgiven. I got a purpose for living. Got a home in heaven. What's the big deal about that? Where else are you going to get that? When you stand up, he says, you will be rewarded greatly in heaven. And he says, by the way, when all this put downs come along, remember, you're in good company, Jesus said, because they did the same to all my witnesses before you. All those spokesmen, all those preachers, all those prophets, all those godly women and godly men in the Old Testament. He said, this is par for the course, of course. My people have always been put down by evil. Can't stand light. Darkness can't stand light. Evil can't stand goodness. But he said, don't worry about it. You're going to be rewarded in heaven. Now remember, this guy, let me wrap it up here. Daniel is 82 years old when this happens. And he's not even finished. Because he passed this test, his greatest contribution to the world happens when he's 85 years old. At 85, he is given by God the secrets of the mystery of history. And God tells Daniel, not anybody else, how the world and history are going to end. And that's the rest of the book of Daniel. We're not even going to cover all that. Scholars have studied it for years and years and years. It's brilliant. And he reveals things that nobody could have known any other way. And he's getting this at 85 years of age. Daniel started strong as a teenager. He's starting strong for God. And then he became strong in his 20s and 30s. And then he stayed strong in his 40s and 50s and 60s. And now at 85, he's ending strong. I want you to end strong. The truth is, most people don't end life strong. They just trying to coast into it. He's at 85. He's still being used by God. I know people who check out at 55. And they start going, you know what? I've already served my time in the church. Let somebody else serve. I've given to 5 building programs. Let somebody else give. And they're checking out, and they're limping in and they're to the finish line, and they're coasting in, and they're wasting their life. Maybe you just don't realize that your greatest contribution will be at 85. But the only way you're going to know that is kneel daily and have a conversation with God. And if you stay close to God, your best days will be the rest of your days. You know, Daniel at 85 is not retiring. You know why? Because the word retirement is not in the Bible. Okay, maybe you were paid to be good, you got a salary, but now in retirement you're good for nothing. God, if you're alive, God does not intend for you to coast. God never intended for you to coast through life. God never intended for you to be unselfish, serving, and giving, and the last 20 years of your life be totally self-centered. If you're going to be self-centered for the next 20 years, God may as well kill you because you're no use to anybody else. God didn't put you here to live for you. And if you got more free time now, he expects you to use it for his glory and to stand up and speak out for him. His most important contribution came at 85 years of age. Why? Because he prayed. Now, I want you to pull out this commitment card inside here. It says, my commitment to pray like Daniel. I want you to finish well in life. More than anything else, I don't want you to limp into the finish line. I want the next days of your life, whether it's 5, 20, or 50 years left, I want the rest of your life to be the best of your life. And it's going to start with praying like Daniel did. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. It doesn't tell us how long. I'm going to challenge you to pray 5 minutes 3 times a day. If you'll make that commitment, I'll send you material and teach you how to do this. And our pastors, our teaching pastors, Pastor Tom, Pastor Buddy, myself, we're preparing materials to help you do this. Now, I'm not asking you to make a commitment for the next 80 years. I'm asking you to make it for 40 days. 40 days. Could you pray 3 times a day? Once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the evening? There are 24 hours in a day, so let's say sometime in the first 8 hours, sometime in the second 8 hours, and sometime in 38 hours. Just pick 3 5-minute periods. Now, you might want to just look across it. You say, I'm going to take 140, 540, 940, and, whatever. So that would be your 3 times. And you set your alarm, and you wake up, and you pray for 5 minutes, and you go back to sleep. Do you think God would honor that? If you set your watch and got up and started praying for 5 minutes, and I can teach you how to pray for 5 minutes. Is it that important to your life? Do you really want to be strong? Or you want to be weak? You want to be wimpy? Do you want to be courageous or cowardly? Do you want to be character or just charisma? I want to challenge you. It says here, 3 times a day, Daniel got down on his knees. By the way, why is it good to get down on your knees? It's just a spirit of humility. And he prayed. Have you ever prayed on your knees? You might try that. Giving thanks to his God, just as he had done all his life. So for the next 40 days, I commit to pray 3 times a day for 5 minutes. Send me help to do this, and I will. And I choose these 3 daily times. I want to challenge you. Can you give 15 minutes a day to your God? Good question. If you are, sign your name, email, or phone at the bottom, and I'll send you some stuff. Now, we're not starting 40 days of prayer yet, but I'm getting these in advance so I can know who to send the material to. If you'll do that, then God will definitely bless you as you get to know him better and better and better. And so be sure, fill that out, drop it in the offering basket in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Jay Cranda, the online pastor here at Saddleback Church. We're so glad you joined us to watch this message today. At Saddleback, we believe that life is better together. That's why we want you to get connected to our church family, whether in person or online. We have campuses all over Southern California and on 4 continents all around the world that would love to welcome you to their weekend services. You can find a campus near you at saddleback.com/locations. And if you're not able to attend a campus in person, don't worry. We have an online community designed just for you. You'll have an opportunity to connect with the messages each week and find resources to help you grow your faith. Thanks again for watching, and we look forward to welcoming you into our church family.